Hi, this is Mike Schmitz, and welcome to another edition of Screencasts Online. In this week's episode, we take a look at my favorite email client for the Mac, which is MailMate. Now, MailMate is not the most widespread, the cheapest, or the greatest looking email client available, but that's not what it's trying to be either. And I don't feel bad saying that because that's right from the developer's website. Instead, MailMate aspires to be the most powerful, most flexible, most efficient, most standards compliant, and the most secure email client, and in that sense, I'd say it does a pretty good job. MailMate is developed by a single individual, but most of the features of MailMate are a result of discussions with its users. I can tell you from personal experience, the developer is very responsive, and there is a free 30-day trial so you can actually see if it's right for you before you commit. Now, one of the main features and intentional constraints of MailMate is the plain text editor. MailMate only allows emails to be written using the plain text editor, but it's important to understand that's actually a feature and an intentional limitation of MailMate. It might even be its most defining feature. If you're not familiar with plain text, it is essentially whatever text you can write with your keyboard. And that means you cannot visually emphasize words, create outlines, create links, or insert images within the text editor itself by clicking on interface buttons, for example. Instead, you can do this by using the simple markdown syntax, which is then automatically converted by MailMate to HTML when it is sent, which is the unofficial standard for rich text emails. MailMate will also automatically show you a preview of the email, and this is what most recipients of your email are going to see. Another thing that sets MailMate apart is its integrations with other productivity apps. MailMate integrates with just about any productivity app available for the Mac, and it's actually the only email application other than Apple Mail that directly integrates with some of them like Busy Contacts. This is important because it allows you to take action on your email messages using the right tool for the job, and then clear that message out of your inbox and move on to other things. So if you're looking for a powerful keyboard-centric email application that will allow you to plow through mountains of email quickly and easily, you might want to give MailMate a look. Let's get started.